Hey folks, we all know that whenever we need to arrive at a decision, we need to have data. And how do we get data? We get data by either primary data source or a secondary data source. So a primary data source is the data source that we generate generally by doing surveys. Now, whenever we do survey, we can do survey of the entire target population, or we can take a sample of the population and do the survey of that sample and then estimate what it might be like for the entire population based on the results we get for the sample or analysis of that sample. So if you're wondering what is the sample or population, I have recorded a video to explain these terms in a simple, easy to understand way. You can go out and check my YouTube channel for the video on populations and samples. Now, in this video, we will learn how different types of sampling methods exist, what are the advantages and challenges in each of them. Hi, I am Chaitanya Gundi. I am a data analytics coach and the co-founder of Swachh Data Analytics Hub. I am on a mission to help 1 million working professionals achieve career growth through the skills of data analytics. So folks, let's dive deeper into understanding the various sampling methods. Now, whenever we talk of a sample or taking a sample, we are obviously referring to the population, or in many cases, if the population size is very, very large, such as the country's population, like say India's population, we can also consider a significant chunk of that population, which is called as a frame in statistics language. So we are focusing on either the population, if it happens to be, let's say, the entire students of a school, which is a manageable data, or we are focusing on a portion of that population which is used for sampling, and that portion is called frame. Now, let's say if I want to survey the population of India on a certain aspect, let's say some certain consumer behavior on a certain product, the frame I select is very, very significant because out of that frame, I am going to select the sample. So if I am selecting a frame which is not inclusive of pan India, then I might get a inaccurate conclusion. And furthermore, if I select a frame, for example, say of people in Punjab, and I try to take a sample out of that frame versus I go to say Tamil Nadu or say West Bengal and I fix that as the frame and then take the sample out of that, I might even get opposite conclusions. So if I am going to select a frame as against a population in case of large size of population, I need to be very, very careful in selecting the frame which is as inclusive of all different types of segments. Now, frame is not the uh, category which is used for the sample. Out of the frame, we again take a sample. So let's say the frame is of a certain geographical area. We are taking a sample out of that. Now, there are two types of sampling methods. We will see what they are. As you can see, there are two types of sampling methods primarily. One is called non-probability sample and another is called probability sample. Now, don't get scared of those words because probability is a mathematics concept which is not comfortable for many students. So here what we are understanding is basically if I am selecting a non-probability sample, in that sample, I don't know what is the likelihood of a particular item or a particular person getting selected to be analyzed in the sample. I will take an example in a short while to make it easy to understand and clear. But for now, we will understand that in non-probability sample, we are not interested or we don't know the probability of the item being in the sample. Whereas in a probability sample, we know exactly or to a largely accurate level what might be the likelihood of a particular item or a person to be sampled and surveyed. So hold on your horses. We'll take an example to understand these two things better. In a non-probability sample, for example, let's talk of, okay, I'll recollect one incident when my friend was doing an MBA in marketing. And as always, we all take or tend to take or try to take the shortcuts or easy methods whenever we are given an assignment. So my friend also tried to approach the easier way. They were given an assignment of conducting a market survey to understand consumer behavior for a certain category of products. What my friend did was, instead of surveying random people, because he was afraid or shy or felt that people might not respond favorably, he tried to do the easiest thing or the most convenient thing. He took a list of his closest friends and family members, called on them, found their responses, and tabulated the data, and that's what he called his market survey. Well, friends, you know that's not exactly a market survey because that's not going to tell us what we intend to know. It's not going to tell us what the entire spectrum of population, or for example, that sample would have believed or rated that particular product or category of products. We simply know those closest to us or those whom we can easily approach, what are their ratings or preferences. So that is what is convenience sample. What is the advantage of it? It's very fast, very easy, no hassles. Large data can be generated if you have a large network of friends or acquaintances, but we know the downside. So this is one example of a non-probability sample. By the way, it's one of the categories of non-probability sample, and here is that convenience sample. Now, what about the other category, the judgment sample? Let's understand that whenever elections are being conducted, or whenever there's a cricket tournament or any famous sports game or championship event happening, some experts are invited to share their views and opinions. And these experts have their own thoughts or own ideas or own insights. And that can also be a data, that can also be a survey, that can also be considered as a sample. But is that giving an accurate picture? Maybe, maybe not. And in most often, it will be that the analysis or the data or the sample we are getting is a prejudged one. Though it might have valuable insights, but it still is a prejudged one. So here we go. In these two type of samples, we don't know whether every item will have equal likelihood of being selected, or even better, any item if I randomly select, I don't know if that item has a probability or a likelihood of getting selected. Let's try to understand this even better using the judgment sample example. For example, an expert like Sunil Gavaskar is brought to study the sample of a team of cricketers. Or let's say he or she is asked what would be his ideal team. His answer might not be the same as if suppose the same survey is being taken from a cricketer such as Tendulkar or maybe Ravi Shastri. So if suppose Gavaskar names Rohit Sharma as one of the players, we don't know Rohit Sharma's likelihood of being selected when we bring about other experts. So that's what non-probability sample is. I hope it's clear. Convenience sample and judgment sample. In convenience sample, the people closest to us, the items easily approachable, form part of it. But which are these items or which are those people depends. There is no proper probability or likelihood we can calculate or arrive at one in advance. Similarly, the judgment sample. Now let's come to the various subcategories of the probability sample. And here they are. They are simple random sample, systematic sample, stratified sample, and cluster sample. Now, before we go into each of those four categories of probability sample, we will understand what is probability sample. So in a probability sample, we know that every item in that particular frame, what is the likelihood of that item being a part of that sample or being a part of that survey. Now, whenever we do surveys, if we want to study certain characteristics of the sample and then estimate the same to the entire population, don't you think it would be better if we go for a probability sample, though it will take more time, more effort, more resources, because it might be more close or closer to the accurate picture than the non-probability sample. So having said this, we will understand what are these different types of probability samples. The first and the most basic type is a simple random sample. So simple random sample, as the name suggests, we have, let us say, a frame size. Let us say we are selecting 30 students out of a population of 1,000 students of a school to understand certain parameters or let's say in layman terms characteristics. So maybe it is percentage of marks or learning behavior or certain other patterns, maybe interests, whatever. Now this 30 is the frame, and for our convenience, let us say we can divide this into 10 students groups. So there are three groups we can form in this case of each of 10 students. Now, how are these groups formed is in a totally random way. A student, say A, can be part of the first group, can be part of the second group, can be part of the third group. So equal likelihood. And then once that sample of 10 students is arrived, which of the three samples is selected for the survey is again having an equal probability. We may survey the students of sample 1 or sample 2 or sample 3. So here everything has an equal probability. Let's say if I am dividing the frame of 30 into 3 samples, each sample has 1 by 3 likelihood or probability of getting surveyed. And if each sample has further 10 students, as in this case, each student stands a chance of 1 by 3 into 1 by 10, that is 1 by 30 of being part of that survey. Very, very straightforward. Okay. So this is random sample for you. Now, what is the advantage of random sample? There is no specific criteria we assign it. We simply divide it into equal portions or subportions and then take one out of them. There are two types of random samples. One is sampling with replacement and sampling without replacement. So sampling with replacement. If suppose I have divided the students into three groups and selected the first group sample, and I have taken the first student response, I can ask the student to go back and join the group again. And again, out of the 10 people we are remaining, again, I can select randomly. So the first student still, again, he or she stands the chance of being part of the second survey. This is what is called sampling with replacement. And there is sampling without replacement, wherein after that student is surveyed, he or she is removed from that particular group, and out of the remaining students, in this case 9, we will select one randomly. Now, obviously, in many cases, sampling without replacement will give us the better picture. Then we have what is called as systematic sample. Now, what is systematic sample? Systematic sample is better than simple random sample. In the process of arriving at a systematic sample, let's take the same example. We have 30 students. We have divided them into 3 groups. Now we have selected, say, third person in each group. So the third person in each group is part of the sample. So there are 3 students in this case as part of our sample. Based on their measures, we will estimate what might be happening for the entire population. This is called systematic. Why systematic? Because once we have divided it into groups, we know exactly which item or which person in the group is going to be part of the sample. So what is the challenge in this? The challenge in this is that if, say, the third person what we have selected, third student in group 1 and third student in group 2, third student in group 3, all show same behavior or same performance measure in that particular aspect, whatever we are going to analyze, then we have a challenge. We don't have diversity. We don't have the whole spectrum as part of the sample. What do I mean by that is, if the third student of the first group, let's say, is a student who has scored above 90 in a certain subject, which is what we are trying to measure, the third student of the second group also happens to be the same. The third student in the third group also happens to be the same. We don't know how the students are faring in general if we want to measure or understand their performance in a subject as a whole. So that is the challenge with systematic sampling. To overcome the simple random or systematic sampling challenges or disadvantages, 2 other categories are there. One is the stratified sample. Stratified sample is nothing but the frame or the population is divided into strata, and these strata have some common characteristics. Let's say these 30 students have been divided into 3 groups, or let's say better 5 groups, maybe of 6 students each. Now, why 5 groups? Because maybe in the first group, all the students are good in physics, in that they have scored more than 90 in physics. In the second group, all the students are good in fine arts, in that they have represented their state or country in the fine arts activities. In the third group, all the students are good in sports. In the fourth group, all the students are good in some other characteristic. So what's happening here is, once we have formed those strata, we can select any one member of each strata. It doesn't matter which one, because all of them are sharing the same characteristic. Now, so if we select one student from the strata 1, one from strata 2, one from strata 3, and so on up to strata 6, we've got 6 students who have a mix of attributes. And if we survey them, we can be in a better position to estimate what might be there for the entire population. So stratified is very, very, we can say, powerful and better than simple random or systematic random sampling. However, what the challenge people face in stratified sample is that it's not that easy. There are resources. You need to first identify what is the decision variable or what is the commonality of the strata you're going to take, and then you need to form a different strata, always focusing on the inclusion of all the segments of the population when you're considering all the strata. You should not exclude any segment. That is a challenge with stratified sampling. Otherwise, it is one of the best methods of sampling in terms of arriving or estimating at the characteristic of the population. Now, the final one is the cluster sampling. Now, cluster sampling is similar to stratified sampling. Only thing is that the cluster is a naturally occurring feature. For example, people living in a particular region, let us say people living in a humid climate, people living on a high altitude, people living near the sea, people living away from tropical zone, all whatever, based on whatever we are doing, physical factors, geographical factors. We can also have, say, people in the age group of 40 and above who are managing their own business. people in the age group of 50 and above who are running family business, people who are in the age group of 20 to 30 just joined job or having an experience less than 5 years, whatever. So this is a natural cluster. The previous strata is nothing but we defined it. Here we are having it already existing as part of either geographical commonalities of certain segment of people or some other naturally occurring attributes. So again, the same thing, we divide the entire frame or population into various clusters, take one random person from the cluster or item from the cluster and then sample it. Now, in terms of accuracy of estimation, cluster sampling is not that accurate as compared to stratified sampling, because even in a cluster, we may not have the 100% inclusive nature of all the different attributes we are trying to see. For example, if I'm talking of geographical factors, let's say we have divided the frame into a cluster of, say, people living in humid region, people living on a mountain, and maybe people living near the, what we can say, plateau or plains, let's say, which have, if you are trying to measure the, uh, consumption of ice cream, for example. So in different regions, what happens is that we have divided them into clusters, but we don't know a person living on a mountain may still prefer ice cream for whatever reason. So it doesn't mean that a person living in a mountain means they are not buying ice cream or their preference for ice cream is less because of the climate and all that. It's not directly inferable like that. Whereas in a stratified sample, irrespective of the naturally occurring factors, we divide a person based on their preference for ice cream, their preference for dessert, their aversion for ice cream, for example, and so on. So stratified sampling happens to be a better way when it comes to estimating the population's parameters based on the results we get from the sample. So here we go again, friends. To recapitulate, we have simple random sample, systematic sample, stratified sample, and cluster sample when it comes to probability sampling. And we have convenience sample and judgment sample when it comes to non-probability sample. So these are the various methods in which samples are collected in surveys and based on which the attributes of the entire population are estimated. Hope you found this video useful. In one of the subsequent videos, we will go deeper into these sampling methods and maybe also understand what's meant by sampling error and other statistical measures. If you have any thoughts or any doubts or any subtopics you would like me to cover, please feel free to share them in the comments below. As always, happy learning. Bye.